In this video, I show you two examples of how we add a sense of motion to our images while we take the image and while we edit it. And then we close with how to use Photoshop's motion blur filter to give it an additional sense of speed. Hello amigos, this is Pablo Garcia, the engineer photographer. If you had seen my videos before, you know that I like to take nature photos, especially birds in flight. One of the techniques that we use to get a sense of motion on our images is to use a slow shutter speed and move the camera, pan the camera with the movement of the birds. And as you can see in this image, you see quite a bit of motion on the movement of the wings of the birds, but the photo appears sharp primarily because we have the head and the eye of these two birds up front that are sharp enough to give the sense of sharpness to the overall photo. Now, I like this image not only because of the movement on the wings, but also the movement on the background. You can see the lines on the background that follow the direction of the birds. And that's the result of panning, moving the camera, slow shutter speed, trying to have good technique and quite a bit of luck so we can capture some interesting wing positions, but also get the head and the eye especially sharp enough. Now, if the eye is sharp but not sharp enough, we can now use Topaz Sharpening Eye as a great tool to add additional focus to areas like the head or the eye. So that's a tip. Another technique we use is when we have a higher ISO or more light and we use a faster shutter speed. In this case, I was using 1/640 of a second, and we actually freezing the movement of the birds. In this case, we had these three geese almost flying in formation, interesting wing positions, and the image is frozen. The wings are frozen, and we also froze the background. But to give a sense of motion to this image, what we do is we crop, provide enough room ahead of the birds so we give the impression that the birds can follow and fly through the image. And we also use a little bit of dash and burn or vignetting to use light to give a sense of movement or motion of the image. And now we have this recent image of a northern harrier. And I use the techniques of image number 2 that I just showed you, where I provided enough room ahead of the bird and I try to control the light as well. But I want to add more motion. I would like to borrow from image number 1 where we have movement in the background to give a little more sense of speed or movement on the bird, because this bird actually wasn't flying very fast through the air when I took this image. Now, to do that, we can use motion blur, the filter motion blur in Photoshop. I'm going to use Control J to duplicate the background, go to filter, blur, motion blur, and you have two controls. One is angle, and basically that's the direction of the blur. In this case, I'm going to keep it at 0 degrees because the bird was flying pretty much horizontally. And distance, which is the amount of blur from no blur to some blur, and this simulates actually moving or panning the camera. Now, for my taste, something around 120 pixels works fine for this image, but to make it easier for you to look on your monitor, I'm gonna go something around 80 or 200 pixels. Now, this will be the resulting image. The problem with this is, even though we're creating the motion we want in the background, we're blurring the bird, and we're creating some ghosting behind the bird. We can fix one problem of blurring the bird by creating a mask and bringing the bird from the original layer. We could try to fix the ghosting by using the clone stamp tool if we have a small amount of ghosting. But I found another way of doing this. So I'm going to cancel. I'm going to show you what I want to do. Now, so we have here the duplicated layer we did. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of the bird. I want to create a layer that has just background. So I'm going to select the lasso tool, and I'm just going to go around the bird. I don't have to be very precise. but we selected around the bird. Now we're going to use content aware fill under edit content aware fill to get rid of the bird. And content aware fill analyzes the image and is saying that it's going to use this green portion of the image to get inspired and create pixels that would replace the bird. And as you can see in the preview image, it did very well. Sometimes you need to provide additional input, like deleting some areas that you don't want content aware fill to use. But in this case, it did a very nice job of creating a seamless background. So I'm just going to say OK. And content aware fill is going to create an additional layer for the area that we want to repair. And here we are. So now I'm going to combine all the layers into a new layer that combines everything. So Control-Alt-Shift-E creates a new stamp layer that has everything. So it's just a background image. This is the image that I want to blur. One suggestion is at this time is convert this into a smart object, this layer into a smart object, so you can come back over and over again if you want to adjust the amount of blurring. So I'm going to select the layer and convert to a smart object. So now that the layer is a smart object, I'm going to go to filter and motion blur. And again, you can adjust the degree of blurring that you want. Let's use something around close to 200 pixels just to make it easier to look on the screen. I told you for my taste, something like 120 works better for this image. And I just select OK. And now we have a blur image, not very interesting. So what we need to do is bring back the bird. So let's go to the background layer. And I'm going to select the bird. So I'm going to select the quick selection tool, select subject. I'm going to let Photoshop analyze the image and select the subject. You did a very good job of selecting the bird. Not perfect. You can see it here in this section of the wing. It wasn't a perfect selection. You can take time to refine it a little bit. That's what I'm going to do. Okay, you can spend time, doing refinement of the selection. But for now, let's say this is good enough. I'm going to go to the top layer. And now I need to create a mask, but I want an inverse mask so that the bird is going to show through. So all I'm going to have to do, since I have the top layer selected, which is the smart object, is create the mask, but I'm going to press Alt, so it creates the inverse. And now there it is. It created basically a white mask with the bird in black to show the bird from the original background layer. And here we have it. We have an image with a blur background with a sense of movement and the sharp bird. So that's basically a technique that I started using to add a little bit of sense of motion. We want to make sure we don't go crazy, and it works very well. Well, I hope you like this technique. It works very well. This combination of content aware fill, motion blur to give our image a little bit of sense of movement. If you like this technique and these videos, please don't forget to subscribe. Tell a friend about this channel. Help me grow the channel. Send me a comment, and I'll see you next time.